Marshall Chriswell is with us again this morning, and this radio program is intended to be for informational purposes only. This information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing, and the information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of these differences, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. He is Marshall Chriswell, and he joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Pretty nice walking up the street on a day like today, wasn't it?
Yeah, not bad at all.
Nice and sunny out there this morning. I want to talk about a very serious subject this morning. Children, the custody chain, status, temporary, permanent, all of those different issues that surround when both of the parents get in trouble with the law. Unfortunately, we see it a lot lately because of drug cases. Mom and dad are both in trouble, and the kids are the ones we have to be protective of most of all. If you could talk about what happens legally when mom and dad are out of the picture because they've both been arrested or for some reason that they're involved in some legal problem, and the children, we always hear the term, are taken away from, but where do they go?
I see. Yeah, that is a really timely topic and a really important one. You know, the opioid epidemic that we're experiencing in this country and in lots of small towns like Indiana is really touching every facet of life. And you're right, domestic relations issues, custody, child custody issues is right at the forefront there. And so when you're talking about child custody and parents who have legal issues, have maybe they've been incarcerated or they have issues that are affecting their ability to successfully parent their child, then you're right. So something has to happen to keep those children safe out of harm's way, while the parents hopefully get the help that they need. What we see most often is that family members are stepping up. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's become really, really prevalent, particularly grandparents. Grandparents stepping in and saying, okay, my son, my daughter has these issues, and I'm going to go ahead and take at least temporary custody of my grandchildren, and while my son or daughter gets hopefully back on their feet, or whatever's going to happen there. So most of the time it's family. But in the event that there aren't family members that are willing or able to step into that role, most often what's going to happen is that the children are going to enter the custody of Children Youth Services. And each county has a Children Youth Services department. And so the Children Youth Services will become involved, usually by a tip, a telephone call, saying, "Hey, these parents have these issues, and maybe you should look into it." But whatever precipitates it, they're going to perform an investigation and file a petition in the Court of Common Pleas to have the child adjudicated as a dependent child, and to actually take legal and physical custody of the child and find, sometimes it's a relative, but other times it's a foster care situation.
In all of these situations, the circumstances are so different with each and every one of them. Sometimes the parents are able to get back on their feet and to re-enter meaningful life in society. And then there must be a decision made, I would assume, by a court as to whether or not they can legally have custody of their kids again, whether it's safe for those kids to go back to the parents. And sometimes unfortunately, it becomes even more of a problem if the grandparents have been taking care and the child is well adjusted, and the grandparents say, you know what, why don't we just keep it the way that it is? And you hate to see families torn apart in that way, but it does happen, doesn't it?
It certainly does. So in the event that it's more of an informal situation where you don't have an agency like Children Youth Services involved, and grandparents have taken custody of the children temporarily, and the parents then are not doing the things that they need to do to enter recovery or even demonstrate the ability that they're going to be able to parent. Sometimes it's just a matter of can they even get stable housing and employment, things like that. So if you have that kind of informal situation, if it drags on for long enough, a lot of the times grandparents are going to say, okay, well, just as a practical matter, we've got to have some legal rights here. We've got to be able to communicate with the child's doctors. We've got to be able to get them, pick them up from school if we need to do that. And schools will give you a hard time about that if you don't have a court order. And you're not a parent. There are all sorts of things that come up that grandparents say, well, or other family members say, well, we need to have legal rights. And that's when an attorney can step in and say, okay, let's file a custody case here. Let's open a child custody case with the court and get at least a temporary order so that you can do those things and have some stability for this child.
I would guess, and you can tell me if I'm right about this or not, that these types of cases, child custody cases, are some of the more complicated cases that you have to deal with as an attorney, simply because there are so many different angles that must be satisfied in order to ensure the safety of that child.
That's true. Child custody cases they can be very complicated, and because you're dealing with not only an intersection of the law that can be complicated, but then also there are the emotional issues that folks are going through. Just like any domestic relations case, they can be very, very emotional. So they are difficult, but as an attorney that practices in this area, I have a lot of experience with different types of cases, whether it be grandparents' rights cases, aunts and uncles, third parties coming in and saying, well, hey, mom or dad left the child with me for the past 6 months. Can I get custody? And we're not, I'm not a relative or anything, but how does that work? And there's nobody else in the picture to take care of this child. To issues of jurisdictional issues where one parent takes the child or another party takes the child and moves out of state or moves out of the county. What do you do then? So there can be lots of complex issues that arise.
I would guess. And from your standpoint, you have to sort of weed through all of that to come to, and always the overriding thing is what's best for the child. What about in situations where the child that we're talking about is in upper teens, not yet adult status, but upper teens, and clearly has a pretty good idea of what's going on and what the stakes are, and has wishes for him and her as to how they would like to see it resolved? Does that child have any standing in terms of his situation or hers?
So whenever a court's making a child custody determination, there are Pennsylvania law sets forth 16 factors, and I'm not going to go through every one, but the legislature has determined, okay, these 16 things are important in child custody cases. Judge has to take a look at them. For example, continuity and stability in the child's life. What outcome here is going to provide that? Another thing are criminal convictions, drug, alcohol abuse. And another one of those factors is the child's what the child would like to see happen, the child's wishes, to the extent that the child is mature enough to actually express those wishes and have, we call it testamentary capacity. Okay, or so they're going to be able to state to the court, all right, this is what I'd like to happen. And is the child mature enough to have a well-reasoned opinion of that? So a young child, obviously, 4, 5, 6 years old, doesn't have really any say in what happens. You need other folks looking out for them. But when a child gets to be 12, 13, 14 years old, they start to have some opinions, and to the extent that they can express those opinions and that they're well-reasoned and that they can demonstrate maturity, the court does have to take into account what that child wants to do.
All right. So a grandparent, an aunt or uncle, brother or sister, in one of these cases decides as they're listening this morning, man, those are some good points. I need to actually see an attorney and make sure that that my legal rights and the children's legal rights are protected. what would you expect of them to bring to you in a consultation where they would say, this is a situation I see developing, and I'd like to be able to have some standing in this case and be able to speak intelligently on it in terms of my attorney representing me?
Well, at that initial consultation, I just think the most important thing is in a situation like that has such great importance. Don't worry about gathering all these documents and that you don't have enough information to come see an attorney. Just make an appointment and get in to see an attorney, okay? Mm-hmm. If there has been an active case filed, if there's an active custody case or a children youth services case, then, the documents that have been filed in that case would be helpful. But I think a lot of times potential clients get kind of bogged down and say, well, I don't have and this is in all types of cases, I don't have enough information to go see a lawyer yet. Now, just get in and talk to the lawyer, and then we can say, okay, well, we need you to get this, this, and this, and point you in the right direction. But just that phone call is the most important thing.
Something that just occurred to me, and again, this is going down this alley and that road and taking a turn on this street and seeing the issues involved in that, is blended families.
Sure.
Where the mom suddenly is out of the picture, her biological child, the stepdad, who doesn't necessarily hasn't adopted, it's just a family that has come together and been blended. His situation versus the grandparent situation. Is all of that on the table, and grandparents come in and their rights trump his, or is it really based upon each circumstance?
Yeah, it is. The law is set up so that it really is based upon, each circumstance has its own set of facts, and grandparents have custody rights, but so do other third parties that have stood what we call en loco parentis, which is a funny Latin term, which means essentially standing in place of a parent. So if you have a situation where a stepfather has, for a period of time, usually it needs to be exceeding 6 months, has acted as a parent for this child, then he develops significant legal rights to custody. Now, does it trump another biological parent? No, it doesn't. So if the child's biological father was in the picture somewhere, then usually that's going to trump a third party. But grandparents do have rights. But in most cases, it's the court's performing a balancing act with that guidepost of being, okay, what is in the best interest of the child, trying to sift through all of those and looking at a snapshot and saying, okay, what are the issues here, and what is in the best interest of the child. And
certainly if a case doesn't make it all the way into court, all of the parties are involved are going to want to have adequate representation, somebody who can speak to the issue in a legal sense, as opposed to a grandparent, a parent who would just speak right out of their heart, but might not have the legal background in order to make an argument.
Yeah, like we've talked about before, you want those the cooler heads to prevail. Somebody that doesn't have an emotional stake in the outcome to come in and say, okay, this is from a neutral perspective. This is what should happen here, or this is what might happen here. So yeah, I think that it's very important. And you mentioned not having court involvement. I'll say this: a lot of the problems that I run into where you get cases that become child custody cases that become very complicated are because nobody has asserted their rights. Nobody wants to make waves. So there's never been a court order or any kind of even real informal agreement with any definite terms put in place. Everybody's just kind of doing their thing. And I think it's really important in just about every child custody case that there be a written agreement and probably a court order, so that everybody has the same expectations and they're on the same page.
All right. Very good. He is attorney Marshall Chriswell with us here this morning. The segment is called Marshall Law. Folks want to learn more, and certainly we give them a lot to chew on here this morning. What do they need?
Give me a call at 724-465-5826. Stop in to see me in the Atrium Building in downtown Indiana, or online at westernpalawyer.com.
Very good. Enjoy the walk back in the sunshine.
Thanks, Todd. Take care.
It is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank here on WCCS, AM 1160 and FM 101.1.